This is the Amp Hour Podcast, recorded July 22nd, 2013. Episode 155, with guest Jeff Roberg, Mini Module Master.
Welcome to the Amp Hour. I'm Dave Jones from the EEV blog.
And I'm Chris Gamble of Chris Gamble's Analog Life.
And I am Jeff Roberg of the Key Glove Project and Blue Giga Technologies.
Hey, Jeff. Thanks for joining us.
You're welcome. I'm really glad to be here.
And your last name's not Kaiser.
No, Roberg.
Different Jeff.
I'm not that famous yet.
Right.
He's dead to us. We don't know who that guy is anymore. We got a new Jeff. And one who knows Bluetooth. This is cool. I'm excited for this. I mean, we were, once I think we've talked about your project, the Key Glove thing, a couple times in the past couple weeks. But Bluetooth is obviously very hot right now, and we see it integrating in lots of Kickstarter projects, lots of stuff like that. But so it's very exciting to have you on here and be able to pick your brain about Bluetooth.
I'll do my best. I should preface this session here by saying I tend to be quite often a conduit for some of the more really low-level hardware design RF kinds of questions. Very frequently for the more complex questions that I get from customers, because that's my role at Blue Giga is a field application engineer, and so I get to interface a lot with the customers and back to the guys in the research and development department who do most of the legwork, designing stuff and writing firmware. So I tend to pick up a lot of info as I give support, which is really awesome because I enjoy learning things a lot. But there are quite a few questions on concerning some of the lower level aspects of RF design and stuff like that, where I may not actually know what I'm talking about yet.
Oh, that's cool. Actually, that's us too. We have no idea about RF.
Fake it till you make it.
There you go. Yeah,
that's it.
You can put like a little dangly thing, and that makes squiggly bits, and then it talks to other squiggly bits, and right, that's how RF works to me. I mean, it's close enough.
So, tell us about being an FAE, field applications engineer, because we like FAEs. It's the salespeople we don't like here on the Amp Hour.
And they're okay.
Let's be
they're not
clear.
bad.
Come on.
They're okay.
Come on.
My dad's a sales guy. I got to say I like salespeople. So
right.
Yeah.
But FAE, so tell us about being an FAE. At what levels do you get involved with customer projects and stuff like that? Is it superficial, or are you embedded in their lab helping them out, sucking up the solder fumes?
Well, with Blue Giga customers, I've never got so deep that I was sucking up the solder fumes. Almost there
right.
with one customer, but it really depends on the customer, to be honest, because we try to support almost everybody, and of course there's some amount of triaging that has to go on, prioritizing to say, well, we'd love to support you as well, but we've only got limited resources, so we can't support every hobbyist. But actually, we do get to most of the hobbyists as well, in addition to our bigger customers. And that's one of the things that drew me to Blue Giga as a customer way back before I even had any kind of idea that I might be working here. Because I was just some random dude working on this little personal project, which, the Key Glove, and I wanted to make it wireless. And so I looked around and I wanted to use Bluetooth because it seemed like the obvious choice given what you can do with different kinds of input control and things like that. The HID profile in particular, it is a perfect launch point for very wide compatibility with a lot of devices that are out there. And ultimately landed on Blue Giga's, or one of Blue Giga's modules, so the WT12. It's their kind of flagship Class 2 standard little Bluetooth module. And I had a question. I'm trying to remember what question I even had. There's no way I'm going to pull that up without searching through my email. But anyway, I had a question, and just send it in because as part of trying to get access to the documentation, you have to create a free account on they call it the Tech Forum website, and then you have access to all the firmware and documentation and things like that. So
yeah.
Boo. We aren't officially here at the Amp Hour. We are not a fan of sign-ups.
Yeah. But, I mean, it's understandable sometimes. But, yeah.
I can definitely empathize. And, if for the resources that I have under my control personally, my own projects, I tend to stay away from signups. Seeing how the business is run internally, I can understand why they do that, because it's a way that all of the whole business essentially, rather than just the support team or just the sales team or any those individuals or groups of individuals, rather than just giving those people access, they can sort of start this thread of what you do with the products. And it isn't that they're trying to control it, it's that they're trying to keep track of it so that they can allocate the right resources to you to know, oh, well, this is, this person is probably going to end up building 10 things or one thing, and this person is probably going to end up building 100,000 things. And so it's just, realistic kind of prioritizing. So they don't lock it away. They give everybody access to all the same stuff. It just requires a free account. So, but I definitely empathize with not wanting to do signups.
Yeah.
And of course, it always comes down to volume, right? Those people who are going to order 1 million modules, they get top priority on the support.
Well, it helps too, but I mean, like you mentioned, with if they support hobbyists, then that could always turn into something huge, right?
Yeah,
I mean, like a Kickstarter program or something, right?
Exactly.
That's the approach that they try very hard to take. It's that they don't actively shun people who are small. But they do need to prioritize realistically, because they're actually,
of course,
fewer people who work at the company than you would expect given the volume that we do.
Oh yeah.
So it's. They have to do some very creative kinds of resource allocation. But as I was saying back, when I first signed up, I was looking for information, downloaded the documentation because I like to download stuff and read data sheets. I'll even stay.
Nerd.
You're not a paper guy? Are you a paper guy or no?
I actually cannot stand paper. I will go
really?
paperless any way I can.
Ooh.
New school nerd.
Yeah.
Young whippersnapper.
I like paper still, but okay, that's refreshing. That's good.
So I downloaded like every data sheet I could find, even for the 90% of their product line, which at the time I had no interest in anyway, just because that's what I felt like doing. But so I ended up with this question. Yeah, exactly. So I had a question, which they proactively, one of the sales guys at the time just said, so we saw your sign up and just wanted to reach out and say, if you have any questions, email me directly. And you can kind of tell, not knocking their process, especially something I won't do because I work there now. You can tell that's somewhat of a form letter. And I know from being internal,
it's a given.
It isn't automated, but it is a form letter. So there is still some kind of personal aspect. They actually see what happens. They say, here's this guy. And they know, or at least they can make an educated guess, this is not somebody who works at Intel or Google or something. This is some guy whose last name is his domain.
Right.
It's just something like that. So they can tell even very early on, or they can make, again, an educated guess to say this is likely to be a big customer, or we have no idea. He could be just a student. But even so, they send out the let us know if you have any questions email to pretty much everybody. And I did have a question. And so I sent them in, I forget what it was, but they responded in an unbelievably fast amount of time. And that wasn't something that I expected, because I figured, well, here's this great big Bluetooth module company. They probably deal with, 10 million, I don't even know, companies, customers, whatever.
Right.
I'm not going to rank very highly on their priority list for, we have to respond to this student because he asked a really easy question and didn't read the documentation. But they did. And not only did they answer the question that I had, but it had to do with a feature that wasn't yet implemented, but they were planning to implement it. So they said, well, you can't do this. And now I'm remembering now as I'm explaining the story. it had to do with a scroll wheel, vertical scroll wheel control using the human input device profile, which at the time in their firmware was not supported. And it was something I wanted to be able to do with the Key Glove. And so they told me straight up, well, you actually can't do this yet, but we're working on having a feature where you can, or expanding the HID descriptor really is what they were doing, so that you'll have that access to sending vertical scroll data. And we'll let you know when it's available. And they actually did let me know. Wow. It was like months down the road. They proactively said, oh, hey, by the way, this firmware, and it wasn't even that it was like a public release. It was, oh, this guy asked about it. We've got a beta release. We'll send to you if you want it. And you can try it and see how it goes. And so they circled around all the way without me even bugging them at all about it. And they said, well, here's this to, try it, see if it works for you. If it doesn't, let us know and we'll fix bugs you find. And they were very, very engaging. And I didn't know how big the company was at the time, but that didn't really bother me. I just knew they were very proactive and friendly to even the little guy. I had given them no reason at all to prioritize me above their other customers, and yet they still took really good care of me. So I know, having gone to Finland now 3 times for various meetings, which is kind of cool in itself. Yeah. Except in the middle of summer when it never gets dark. That's weird.
Yeah. Right. I've always wanted to see that.
Yeah.
It does almost get dark at about 2 or 3 in the morning. It's
dips
dusk
below the horizon. Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But anyway, so everyone in the company pretty much has that same customer ethic. And I mean, they don't all work directly with customers. There's the R&D team, but even the R&D guys occasionally end up working with customers to do, some certain kinds of very intense, specific kinds of bug fixes where it just makes sense to get them directly involved. And everyone in the company has this very customer-oriented focus, and it makes it a very good place to work. It does occasionally get really busy. The demands on everybody are fairly high at times, but it's a good atmosphere to be in because everyone is supportive. Not everyone obviously does the same thing, but they all try to do what they are there to do as well as they can for the end customer. And it really shows in not only for the employees, it's a great place to work, but we constantly get comments from different customers who say, this company has the most awesome support we've ever seen. And I know, to be fair, not everyone thinks that, but we do get a lot of comments like that. So I've been now an FAE there since the beginning of last October. So we're at July, 10 months. 10 or so months. Yeah. And it's been a really good experience for me. Aside from the fact that there have been some incredibly busy times, but that's one of the better problems you can have.
I'm wondering about the customer. I mean, I don't want to ask too much about customers. Like that's obviously probably proprietary information and stuff. But just kind of, this is a module. So Blue Giga sells Bluetooth modules, and so are we talking like little? Are you usually working with like little shops that are integrating this stuff, or is it like even just really big industrial type stuff that just wants to just throw Bluetooth into it? Like where do the Blue Giga modules really fit in well? Is that why certain times are more busy than others?
That again, it depends on the customer, and we do service customers of all different sizes. Typically, when you start to get into the volumes that are up around the 100,000 or so per year, then it. Well, again, also depending on the customer, but around there, it starts to become less efficient to use a module company like us.
I was going to say, I wouldn't have even guessed 100,000. I would have said, geez, you wouldn't have too many customers, pushing the 100,000 limit on a pre-existing module. That's sort of when it becomes much more beneficial to roll your own kind of thing, or integrate it into your own board.
Exactly. And to be honest, I don't know how many customers we have that are that size. But That is true. You know, once you get up to a certain volume level, it makes sense to do your own design, go through all the certifications, because you can save money that way.
Okay, so you have your own module, but what about the actual software then? If people wanted to take what they've designed and implement it, could they, pull in your stuff or what?
We've got a couple of our own totally proprietary stacks that do really well, and that incidentally was another reason that brought me as a customer to BlueGiga, because they have this IRAP stack that runs on their classic Bluetooth modules that is a joy to use, and it's so flexible compared to.
Okay, yeah, I was gonna say, why is that? I really have never used a Bluetooth stack before. Could you explain that more?
Yeah, in Bluetooth there are a number of different profiles that you can use. There's like HID for human input device. There's a number of audio profiles. A2DP is high quality streaming. I think it's advanced audio distribution profile. There's a hands-free profile, which is what you see in like phone headsets. The one that a lot of hobbyists end up using is serial port profile, SPP. That's a really common one, right. And it's very simple for doing cable replacement, for doing any kind of just wireless arbitrary data transfer. It works well. And if
your application, Windows doesn't know the difference whether or not you've got a serial cable plugged in or whether or not you've got two Bluetooth modules.
Exactly. It shows up on the host devices as, or like Windows or Linux or Mac. It
shows up
as a COM port.
Yeah, serial port. COM1. Awesome. Because every hobbyist understands and feels comfortable with that.
Right.
That's the,
And there are a lot of modules out there that implement the serial port profile. The one that SparkFun sells, the Blue Smurf or Blue Bluetooth, I forget all the different models that they have. They're class 1 and class 2. They've got a silver and a gold version. Those are made by Roving Networks. They're RN42. And the RN41, I think, is the class 1 gold module. And those implement a single profile, SPP, serial port. And to be honest, I actually have one in a drawer, and I think it works fine. I'd never had too much of an occasion to use it just because I had access to all the other BlueGiga modules. But I think as a serial port profile module, that's probably a perfectly good product, and I have no reason to knock it. However, if you want to do more than that, and this, I think this is a fair comparison. If you want to do more than that, suddenly it becomes a lot more complicated because they only implement one profile on that module. I think. I believe they have a version that implements the Apple's proprietary IAP profile. And that might run at the same time as the serial port profile. But they have like different hardware versions, or they handle themselves all the firmware loading and versions and things like that. You have to buy the human input device version of their module if you want to do a human input device. And recently, or relatively recently, SparkFun started selling that RN42 HID. And it's the version of the module that has HID support on it. And that's great. And it probably works well. I haven't used the HID version. But with BlueGiga's modules, their IRAP stack, which runs right on the module, it implements like every profile at the same time, and you just have to select which one you want. It's dynamically configurable with very simple AT style commands, and so there's a lot of power that gets bundled into one single module, and that honestly is where BlueGiga has their added value. They make it very easy to do a lot of different things, which, if you need that flexibility, you want to do a hands-free device that also passes arbitrary data back and forth over the serial port profile at the same time. Really, really easy to do.
Oh, right. So you can run all the different protocols all at once with the one module. So you can have a serial port streaming data. You can have the audio streaming data all separately.
Right, all with the same module. And,
awesome.
And they make it a piece of cake to do firmware changes or upgrades. Or, they give you the latest firmware whenever they publish it, and there's no added cost in there. It's very friendly towards that kind of application. And if you don't want to rely on the manufacturer to push out updates, and then you have to go buy a new part or something like that. And I should preface that or qualify that by saying I don't know exactly how, for example, Roving Networks does their firmware updates because I never had an occasion to get too far into that. And they may have a streamlined process, but because I got familiar with Blue Giga's approach and got comfortable with their IRAP firmware, the process for working with that and upgrading and configuring, I was just very impressed with everything that you could do with this one module all at the same time. So that's where their stack comes into play. And I'll go into a little bit of detail on stack. There's two halves of a Bluetooth stack that you typically run into whenever you're working with a Bluetooth hardware module or software, say on Windows. There's the radio itself, which is what they call the controller portion of the stack, and that's the physical hardware, and it goes up to what they call the host controller interface. I'm going to mix up my layers here. It's different from the network layer. I haven't studied it enough to be able to rattle it off the top of my head. But anyway, there's the controller portion, which is basically the hardware. And then there's the host portion, which if you have your standard USB Bluetooth dongle, that's the controller and that's it. And you plug it in, and then you have to install Bluetooth drivers. Or, if you have a modern OS, they typically come with their own Bluetooth stack. And the host portion of that runs on the PC. Or okay. Mac, Linux, whatever. And there are a lot of different stacks, host stacks, I should say. There's Broadcom, there's Blue Soleil, there's Microsoft has their own, there's the Blue Z that runs on Linux, it's open source. There are quite a few options. But for a very low power kind of application where you have just an AVR microcontroller or something that's a tiny embedded system that doesn't have a lot of power, you can't really run the host portion of that stack on your microcontroller because you've only got 32K of flash and 2K of RAM or something like that. So in those kinds of applications, it becomes very valuable to have something where the whole stack is taken care of for you, and you don't have to worry about porting something over to AVR or MSP430 or whatever. You can just communicate directly over UART, for example.
You just feed the data in and out.
Right,
That's it.
And you have these...
And you don't have to worry about
simple control commands to enable or disable profiles, or call a remote device or make it discoverable, do that kind of thing. It's very straightforward, and so you have this firmware, which in Blue Giga's cases they call it IRAP, and I can't even tell you what that stands for, but it is an acronym of some kind.
And they just whacked I in front because, well, that's cool.
I actually don't know. That could be the case.
So does that mean that there's a so when the stack's running in there, does that mean that it's actually like a ARM based processor or something like that, and it's running an RTOS or real time operating system, and that's running the stack, or is the stack like its own thing?
With Blue Giga's modules, they use CSR's chips for many of them, not all of them, but for many of them. And the WT12, the flagship Class 2 module that I use, it's the Blue Core line. And it's actually what is it? It's an XAP processor, and I'm not really familiar with that architecture. It does require a proprietary development environment. They sell. It's provided by CSR. It's called Blue Lab, and I don't see that part of the development much at all. The firmware developers and R&D take care of that. But it's kind of like a specifically designed platform. I think it's built to do well with this sort of application, but otherwise it's not really that much different from your everyday microcontroller. It isn't like.
Of course.
I don't think it's as complicated as your typical ARM.
Okay,
say.
so it just has like a specific register set or something like that is optimized for power.
Right, and it's got. And I don't know if this is the XAP platform itself, or if that's a separate thing. But the Blue Core product line from CSR has the actual Bluetooth radio built into the chip, so that's where the optimization comes in.
Right,
Right, it's right next to it basically, and it just
Yeah.
That's cool.
System on chip.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's I just wonder because I've seen. Well, have I seen other people do this before? I mean, I guess I've seen like the CC2541 stuff, the TI chipset, and I think that's like an 8051 core or something. I don't remember the core that's actually in there.
It is, 8051. We use that in one of our modules.
Okay. Yeah, and I mean, like I think there's an RTOS in there. They either license you the stack or they sell you the stack or give you the stack either. I'm not sure, but I just was wondering if it's like a super loop or it has to be like an actual deterministic RTOS or something like that.
To be honest, I am not sure about the answer to that one.
Okay, that's all right. I'm kind of talking on my butt anyways. I mean, I'm throwing around words I've heard before. I know what an RTOS is.
That's
but,
what we do here on the ML.
But it's just interesting to hear about how that stuff is working. My bluff has been called.
I've noticed on your front page here, all of your, because I used to work for them, all of your board renders, the 3D renderings of your boards seem to be done in Altium. Are you involved at the board level, actually doing development boards or anything like that, or you're just on the road kind of FAE?
I'm not involved in the development most of the well, I mean, okay, I don't directly do any of the development. Occasionally, I will interface between customers and the guys who actually do the hardware design to say, well, this kind of feature would be nice, or this sort of access will be nice. Most of the time, by the time I start supporting a product or get involved with the product on a hardware level, it's already been designed and they've already got engineering samples. And not that they're keeping our input out as FAEs. It isn't that at all. But just the way it ends up happening, I don't touch the hardware design much. Now, I do my own hardware design separately from Blue Giga, unofficially, and that incidentally was one of the main reasons that I ended up working there.
Did they poach you?
Because
they went, oh, we like this key glove thing you're working on. How about you? Are you interested in a job? Is that how it worked? Tell us the story.
Kind of. It actually wasn't so much, at least as far as I know, it wasn't so much the key glove itself. There are some breakout boards that I ended up designing as a result of what I needed for the key glove. And again, I started with the WT12, their flagship Class 2 module, because that's what I needed. Mm-hmm. And then I'm like, hey, there are these other modules out here. And hey, people actually want to give me money because I can give them Bluetooth breakout boards. Yeah. And so I designed a couple other ones that were honestly really, really simple, which, at the time I was just learning Eagle and stuff like that to do some simple design. And it was very enjoyable for me, but I hardly knew what I was doing. And I still am not too far beyond that stage, but I am a little bit more well-versed in various kinds of tricks that you would do, and being familiar with the modules, certain design mistakes that I made early on. So I actually just went through a round of revisions for some of the breakout boards that I sell. But I don't know if you guys are familiar with the InMojo website.
I've got it open.
Okay, it's kind of like Etsy for
There's a low energy breakout one which you've got
InMojo,
here.
you said?
And it's
InMojo, INMOJO, and it's actually a really great platform. And they originally reached out to me, I think, as a result. They saw the Key Glove, the InMojo guys, and they were just trying to get their platform launched. And it is very similar. I mean, they don't say this exactly, but it's kind of like Etsy for electronics.
Yeah,
geeks.
it's you can sell your modules on there if you don't.
Yeah, or Tindy is another one too. Tindy seems like it's another similar.
Yeah, Tindy.
Yeah. Right.
Tindy's I think a little bit newer. And I've been to the site a couple times and it was appealing, but I didn't have any really compelling reason to switch from InMojo.
Right.
And I've actually worked separately on some PCB assembly with the guys who run in Mojo, and they've been really, really helpful. So I'm happy to be there. They've been great to work with. But
Yeah.
so I started selling these breakout boards in Mojo, and they were all based around Blue Giga's parts. And so I ended up actually doing a little bit of personal support for these things, because when you build something and sell it and it has problems or people have questions, they come
Just
to the
try not
seller.
to support it, right?
Yeah, I build the breakout boards, but if you want support, you have to go to
Good
Blue
luck. Yeah.
Giga. Yeah. Well, fortunately, it wasn't too much work for me, although it had started to build up a little bit. I've tried to improve things a little, so that they become more self-supporting. Honestly, I don't get too many questions anymore, which I would probably have to give credit to for, because their documentation has gotten better over time and examples. And so, the breakout board is simple enough that there really isn't a whole lot that can go wrong with it. If there's something
there's not much on there. There's a USB connector. There's looks like a programming header and a switch, and
Yeah, exactly. It's
not much else. Voltage reg.
Yeah, it's very simple. So people, especially the kind of people who would buy that breakout board, they realize, well, if this isn't working, it's probably the module rather than the breakout board. So I'm going to go to Blue Giga and look for support.
Of course.
And of course, the consequence of that is I am the only FAE for the U.S. region. So I end up doing the support anyway, but I get paid for it. So it's all cool.
Yeah.
Oh, that's hilarious.
So
how does this in Mojo work? Do you? Is it just a Is it just like an eBay kind of place to sell stuff, or do they pack and ship, or how does it?
We've heard this from Dave before.
Work?
Dave's like, I hear the wheels turning here. He's like, I could sell stuff. I could do it.
Well,
without having to pack and ship myself.
Yeah.
Basically, it's kind of like eBay Buy It Now. I don't think they do auctions, and I don't think they do distribution.
No, of course, yeah.
So I believe.
No, I was just talking about eBay in the sense that it's just a marketing platform,
right?
Like it's a one-stop shop where everyone goes to search, kind of.
Right. And I think that was their goal.
Right.
And they basically give customers or would-be customers an easy way to give you money in exchange for your stuff after finding it.
Got it. Yeah.
So it's pretty simple as far as those kinds of platforms go. I think there's only one payment option. You have to use PayPal.
Yep.
And there are pros and cons to that approach, but it works well for people who are in the US selling stuff. So whenever an order comes in, I get a notification email, and then I get a payment notification email from PayPal, and then I have to deal with all the rest of it, shipping and stuff like that.
Right,
so it doesn't scale really well, but I don't have a gigantic volume anyway. I'll sell maybe 5 to 10 modules a week in a good week, and actually that ends up working really well for me, because it's not too much work to deal with on the shipping and that kind of thing, packaging. I've got a pretty good system worked out. I use Endicia for shipping. They're really great. I got a little label printer. Before I had that, man, I was going nuts.
Yeah.
Label printers are worth their weight in gold.
Yeah.
Definitely. And nothing I have to ship is very big. It's all very small.
Yep.
Teeny tiny modules. Even if someone buys like 20 of them, I can stick it in a little padded envelope.
So you don't have tons of packing peanuts around your house, right? That's the
right.
key.
Yep.
I've got a box full of little padded envelopes, but the biggest thing I have is like 4 by 8 inch.
Nice. That's the way to do it.
Yep. That's the way to do it. Yep.
It all fits in the closet. So back to the Blue Giga thing, they eventually saw. Well, it wasn't that they were just impressed with me or something like that. They had an opening for an FAE position that came rather suddenly. Somebody who was there ended up having to go somewhere else. I don't know exactly what the circumstances were there, but so they had this position that was already budgeted for in the company and an opening, and because they had already seen, or they'd actually, and they told me this during the interview process, which itself was remarkably short, as a matter of fact. but they said
they saw all your stuff already. Your interview was done online, as we talk about on the show all the time. Yeah.
The interview would be, do we like you? Yes or no? Yes, you're hired.
Yes,
no, bugger off.
Exactly.
That's pretty much.
They already knew your work. They see you're selling stuff. They know you're supporting stuff. Yeah. Are you a decent chap to work with?
That's exactly how it went. And so they called me out of the blue, or actually emailed me first out of the blue, the main sales guy who's in charge of the U.S. Said, well, we've got an opening here. Is this something you might be interested in? And it actually took a lot of thought and discussion, and because I didn't want to work for Blue Giga, but because I felt pretty happy and well, I should say at least content. The place that I had been working before was actually a very different job. I was doing web application development, and I really liked that whole company, and it was really small. They were very flexible. There were a lot of really good aspects about that job, and I did obviously ultimately decide to switch over to Blue Giga, but none of the reasons that I had for leaving the place where I worked before were negative. So we left on good terms.
Yeah,
they were sad to see me go, and I was sad in some ways to go, but it was just too good of an opportunity to pass up, really.
See, now this is interesting to me because I've had other people ask me this before of like, I'm working in IT, or I'm working in, I know it wasn't IT, but I'm saying like software or something like that. I want to break into hardware. And usually I don't have a lot of people to point to other than like Alan Yates is one who he used to do software, and he jumped over to hardware. And now you're another one. And I don't know if this is going to be an increasing trend or if it's just kind of the ones that we want to talk to on the Amp Hour, but I think this is really interesting because, it's not as common in my mind. I usually hear about, EEs that end up going to do firmware and then move into software after that kind of thing.
Right. Well, I'd have to blame Arduino for this, honestly.
Damn
because,
you, Arduino!
Yeah, you ruined my... Oh, well, actually, no. You just made my life awesomer.
I know, right?
And because I have been primarily a software guy, for basically all of my working life so far. I enjoyed electronics as a hobby. My dad was an electrical engineer. He worked at, I'm trying to remember. His desk got bought by a few different companies while he worked there.
Right.
Hughes Data Systems, Hughes Aircraft, Raytheon. I think Raytheon is the current owner of where he works. But
big Goliath, yeah.
Yeah, and so although he really liked electronics and he had an EE degree, it's kind of interesting that he's now a technical writer, and he totally loves that job. So interesting how things turn out.
That's great. That's good.
But he was definitely, I would say, very instrumental in cultivating my love of electronics as I like a 10 to 14-year-old. He had, I should say, some computers back when it was still not really common for everyone to have computers. He had a TRS-80, but I think that was a little bit before I got involved. I was born in 85, so you can...
the Trash 80 was a bit before that.
So,
it was still going.
Still around,
then,
Yeah, still around. I think the first machine...
Coco 3 or something.
The first one I remember working with, I believe, was a 286. Great big metal case.
Oh, yeah. Turbo button?
Young whippersnapper.
Oh, actually, the first one might not have even had a turbo button. It did, however, have these little metal buttons on the side of the case, which you had to push in and lift up to pop it open. And the reason that was really cool as like a 5-year-old is in Southern California, which is where I grew up, you get the Santa Ana winds, and we had carpeting. And so you get a big metal button, Santa Ana winds, dry weather, and carpeting. And rubber-soled shoes, and so there was a funny incident one time where it was either I or my brother touched the button on that case and ended up, I think we rebooted the machine.
Oh, nice! You felt like a god, awesome. Right?
Yeah,
trying to do it again and again.
Time I used the hex editor on the BIOS without knowing what was happening.
Oops. Yep.
But anyway, so I had access to technology when I was little, and so I enjoyed getting to work with computers as much as I could, we would read GW Basic scripts. I say we, my older brother and I both enjoyed doing this kind of thing.
What's he doing now?
He is actually an accountant at Norfolk Southern Railroad now.
Oh, cool. Wow.
No, come on, he's an accountant.
He enjoys it. And actually, one of the things that he enjoys most is getting to do like these little custom programming automation scripts to make everyone's job easier. Because
see, now that will be a jump. If he jumps back to hardware, that will be the new story to tell. Accountant back to engineering.
That
or
would be interesting.
Yeah.
So he and I both did this stuff with programming, copying GW Basic listings out of the back of Usborne science books.
Nice.
It was so much fun to make a computer do what you wanted. But one of the things that I also did with my dad was a lot of electronic stuff. I would build these little kits. I don't think I actually did Heathkit, although my dad loved Heathkit. By the time I got into it, they were a lot harder to find. But I did a lot of Graymark kits. I don't know if either of you know Graymark.
Yeah, I know Graymark. That was what I did in college, actually, a bunch of those.
Okay.
No, I've never heard of Graymark.
Graymark. Yeah.
Oh, Graymark.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
right.
A lot of fun. But I ended up sort of veering more towards software just because I got better at it, and it was easier to find a programming job than a hardware design job as, a 16, 17-year-old. And then in 2010, here comes Arduino, and I just had this idea for doing a glove-based input device, and I don't even remember where I saw the Arduino originally, but I was like, oh my gosh, you've got to be kidding me. This is like $25 and I can write code that does hardware.
Yeah.
And it was the perfect bridge between what I liked but hadn't been able to develop as a young teenager and what I had spent the last, 7-8 years working on. And so being able to put those two things together and build something cool, or, even just try to build something cool, let alone whether or not it worked, it was just an incredible joy, really. And so that process is what sort of bumped me off the software only path and moved me more towards hardware. And so I still don't really do a lot of hardware design. Like the breakout boards are about as complicated as I get, with the one exception of the controller board on the Key Glove, which honestly is more complicated only because I was able to copy a lot of reference designs. So it isn't that I'm really good at hardware design, but I do understand enough about it to be dangerous, but decently capable to build things that are useful for other people, like the breakout boards. And I love to do stuff like that. I love learning, but if all I ever did was learn, that would end up being kind of boring, I think. What I really love to do is learn and then communicate that to other people who, hopefully are interested in the same thing or may become interested in the same thing, and take that knowledge of, I didn't know how to do this and now I do, and I think it's awesome, and share that with somebody else who then gets to do the same thing for their friends or, customers or whatever. So I really enjoy that process.
Well, I think you're in good company here, talking about technology and such. Yeah, that's our thing too.
Yep, I've been doing it since I was a kid. Before you were born, sonny boy. So tell us more about the Key Glove. How did you get the idea?
Yeah.
And you did a Kickstarter campaign.
I did.
Which was successful.
Yeah.
Tell us all about it.
Well, it's hard to say where I originally got the idea for the Key Glove. Wearable computing. Well, as a matter of fact, no. Well, okay. I shouldn't say that with such conviction. I don't think so.
Okay.
It's hard to say, when little bits and pieces of inspiration come, you don't even realize sometimes where they come from. But my older brother actually was the one who bought the Nintendo when he was 6. He sold popsicles around the neighborhood. So nice. We did have a Nintendo, but we did not have a Power Glove. It was one of those gimmicky, things that was too expensive to justify. And in retrospect, I've heard it was a really, really crummy device.
It was, but the advertising was amazing. There's YouTube commercials. The commercials are on YouTube rather, and it's awesome.
Yeah, actually, I saw the movie The Wizard, which was described as one great big long Nintendo commercial.
It was Mario 3. Really? That was the release of Mario 3.
That's right. So
California.
But it was I saw that not that long ago. But mostly I think what I'd have to attribute the Key Glove's inspiration to is just wearable computing in general has always fascinated me. And of course it hasn't until recently been something that was really viable for a number of reasons. It was one or many of really expensive, really ugly, really huge, or really
heavy.
Yes, heavy, but not very. Why will this word not come to mind? I know exactly
Useful?
the thought that I'm. Yeah, that's the right idea. Not intuitive. There was too much effort involved in using it to make it something that you would do as more than just a proof of concept or to impress your equally nerdy friends.
Yeah.
Whereas now, we have Google Glass and all of these wearable sensors and things.
In fact, 2 out of 3 of people on this podcast right now have Google Glass.
Yeah.
Aha. Poor Dave.
Poor Dave.
Is it any good?
I like it.
I think
Is
so.
it useful? What do you use it for? Come on. Is it useful? Are you doing anything actual practical with it, or are you just having a wank that, I've got Google Glass and you don't? No.
Well,
go ahead, Jeff. Yeah.
I would say for me, no. That's a fair question. There's not a lot right now that makes it a compelling thing to have different from a smartphone, because basically anything you can do with a smartphone,
of course,
almost anything you can do with Glass as well. There is one thing that definitely Glass outshines smartphones in, and that is real-time photography and video. There have been a number of times, and I bet for Chris too, even as few days as you've had it, where you're like, I want a picture of that. Bang.
Snap.
Half a second later, there's your picture. You don't have to pull your phone out. You don't have to pull your camera out. You don't have to start the camera app. It's just
I have a perfect
right
example
there.
of that, actually. I was walking over the Brooklyn Bridge, and everybody else is stopping, pulling out their phone, snap. Oh, that was blurry, snap. I was walking, tap, done.
Exactly. Yeah. So that I think is really powerful. And it'll be a while before we see really what kind of an effect that has on the way we take pictures and videos and stuff as a society in general. Obviously, it would take a public release of Glass.
Well, we're going to flood the internet with more useless bloody pictures and videos, right?
Yeah.
Than what we already do.
No, you only share the ones you want to. So
yeah, hopefully we don't suffer too much from oversharing. But I think as the developers who now have Glass have an opportunity to say, I think this would be really awesome as a context-sensitive or wearable application, as opposed to something that I'd use my smartphone for. There will be a lot of really amazing apps that are built specifically for wearable computing, where right now we can't even imagine them because nobody's had a use case for something like that, and nobody's been inspired to say, oh, this is cool, I'm going to put these things together in a wearable context and make something even more awesome. So it'll take some time before the developers who now have Glass have an opportunity to do that. But as that happens, I think what we'll end up seeing is a slow shift away from something you have to pull out of your pocket and look at, and towards something that is just right there. And it's difficult to say, well, impossible to say really, how that will play out, exactly how far that can go, especially as the technology improves. But that's my feeling with Glass and just wearable computing in general, is it becomes so much more immediate, and at the same time something that is not a distraction, as something that just feels like it's part of you. You don't have to switch from talking to somebody and pull out your phone to see what time it is, or to look at, I mean, there are definitely bad examples of being distracted and impolite, but there are good aspects of wearable computing that will change the way that that we typically think of mobile computing right now in terms of smartphones. I think that will diminish. It won't go away, but I think it'll decrease while wearable computing becomes more naturalized.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And it's tough to say because Sergey Brin talked about it so prominently. Like whenever the thing's talked about, he talked about the fact that people are looking down at their smartphones. But man, you put these things on and you realize that, like, yeah, you walking around, everybody's looking down at a smartphone, just because it's just a thing to do, and it's just.
I'm not. I don't give a shit about my smartphone.
Okay, you know what I mean, though. Like in a crowd of people.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, in a crowd of people, you'll have 60% of them looking down at their smartphone. Right,
and if it gets people more aware, that's cool. I mean, it's a cool thing like that, and I think navigation is another cool one too, because if you're walking down the street, it's just it's closer to your vision, stuff like that. But I don't know. I was really, really excited when I saw Jeff's Key Glove article about this interfacing with the glass, and I think it's really cool that you were able to show how you were kind of sniffing out the packets and stuff like that. Could you kind of walk us through that process in that article you wrote about how you actually got talking to it and stuff?
Yeah, sure. I was really excited to see that article too, actually, when I finally got it put together, and of course the process of gathering that information. It started because I was really interested in what they were going to do with Glass at Google I/O, at the one they just had in May. I wasn't there, but I watched I watched the keynote streaming and one or two Glass related sessions. Streaming, and one of the ones that I watched was called Voiding Your Warranty.
Yeah, that was a good one.
And so they walk through in that session just live during the talk. They show you how to install the app that you need in order to access the Bluetooth settings area, how to pair with a Bluetooth keyboard. I'm like, holy cow, this is exactly what I wanted to be able to do. And the really cool thing is you don't even have to root it. It's not something you can do out of the box with the apps that are already there, but it's really easy to get to that point. Yeah. Hopefully they'll make it a little easiasier, so you don't need to manually. It does take a little bit of juggling ADB. Actually, it wouldn't have been bad, except the ADB driver for Glass is not signed on Windows 8, which is really annoying.
Yeah,
but
every time it pops up and it says
that wouldn't stop you doing anything though.
Right? No, it's actually. I would mostly blame Windows 8 for that, because they made it so in order to sign or to install unsigned drivers, which you can do in Windows 7, they just say, "Hey, this is unsigned. Are you sure you want to do this?"
Stop!
Which is great.
It's a warning. Stop.
In Windows 8, you actually have to reboot into a special mode, kind of like safe mode, but not exactly safe mode. So that was a pain, and especially so because I always keep like 5 million things running all the time. Like, oh man, I have to reboot. That's like turning around the Titanic. Come on. So perhaps a bad analogy, maybe a ship that didn't sink.
Right.
But anyway,
well, you have to sink it, right? That's the
idea. Avoid the iceberg.
Yeah.
So that was a little bit of a pain, but that again, I would say is more Windows than Google or the Glass driver. Hopefully they'll release something that's signed. I mean, I'm sure they will for the public release. But that being said, once you get ADB installed, it's a matter of a couple of really simple commands to manually push a couple of packages. The standard Android launcher, which is your every typical home screen, and then the settings app, which gives you access to the Bluetooth area of the Android settings. And then you just have to get put your Bluetooth peripheral device into discoverable mode, and then it shows up in the list on the Glass the new Glass settings interface that you just installed, and then just pair with it. And because it's standard Android, it's running the same stack that they have in other versions. I think it's 4.0.4 is what's on Glass now. It just pairs and works. There's nothing special you have to do beyond that. And from that point on, all you need to do is know how to control the Bluetooth module side of things to send the control commands that you want to use. And that was the main discovery process for me, because I wasn't sure what all would be supported exactly in terms of some of the Android special hotkeys and that kind of thing. I did know from that session that I watched, the Hacking Glass session, that the D-pad, arrow keys, those keys are supported, and that's if you play around with the Glass timeline interface, that's more or less how most of the navigation works. It's always moving forward or backward and up and down to select. So there's actually not that much you can do with the standard Glass home interface in terms of different kinds of input. It's very simple controls, just left, right to move back and forth. Enter will select, escape will cancel. And that's most of it. I did go through some of the consumer page reports, which are things that on a desktop are typically used for changing volume, start the calculator app, go into sleep mode, navigate forward and backward in your browser, those kinds of things to see what would work. And not a lot of the combinations I tried worked, but I did find some that seemed to put the display to sleep, which is handy. To go, jump back to the home screen, also handy. And there is a reference online on somewhere in the Android documentation on their API website that shows, or it lists all of the officially supported key codes and what the minimum Android version is where they have been implemented. And I tried to correlate what I was testing to that set of tables. And in most cases, it seemed to match up, but not in every case. And I think that's probably due to my lack of understanding of some of the intricacies of the HID protocol, because HID over Bluetooth is actually the exact same specification that USB HID is. So they just wrapped it in a wireless transport encapsulation kind of a thing. And other than that, it's exactly the same as you would see in a wired USB device or USB HID device. So in some ways, that makes it easy to use because there is kind of a lot of documentation out there. But if you don't really know how USB HID works, then you are equally at a loss if you're trying to do it with Bluetooth. And so I've been picking up bits and pieces of the HID profile or protocol, I should say, but I still don't feel like I really, really understand it well. And I think that probably comes across a little bit in that Key Glove Bluetooth Glass integration post that I wrote. There's definitely still some unknowns for me. But I ended up with something that is reproducible, and you can do all of the basic stuff at least with Glass, plus a little bit of not so basic stuff. And it works very well. Anyone who's got a BlueGiga WT12 module and Glass, which I realize is a very, very small subset of people,
yeah,
can do this.
I couldn't get one here in Australia if I wanted to.
Yeah. That is unfortunate, but
exactly.
Hopefully it'll change.
I'm sure it will. There's enough interest. I think they'll get to a public release of it one of these months.
Huh. So the Key Glove itself, I mean, on that side of things, I'm looking at the Kickstarter page. This finished in 2011. So
yes, it did.
Those are all delivered or no?
Sadly, no. I really wish that they were. And this is something that I didn't run out of money. I actually still have a good sized chunk of the money that I raised. I have not had time because I'm the only guy who's actively working on that project. I'm not opposed to other people working on it at all, but it just hasn't.
It's your baby, right?
It is, and there would be some sadness and heartache for giving some portion of that over to somebody else, but I'm not opposed to it. I mean, the whole source code for basically everything is online, but it just hasn't been something where someone motivated came up to me and said, "Hey, I want to take part of this and
watch
work
out, man.
on it."
Being on the Amp Hour, you just wait and see.
To be honest, that could be really awesome because
oh boy, here it comes.
hey, I can always say no, and if I say no, they can still always take all the open source that I have posted and build their own version. And frankly, that wouldn't bug me because if not that I'm hoping this would happen, but if somebody else said, "Hey, I want to take this whole project and build it," and I ended up being more or less shut out, there would definitely be some amount of disappointment there because I really like working on this project. I enjoy for many different reasons, but if the product got created basically the way I imagined it, That's what I'm after. It isn't that I want it. I mean, I'd love to do it, but I want to see it done.
Yeah.
That's not an invitation for anyone listening to try to shut me out.
I would much rather. This is very confusing. I want it. I don't want it.
The thing is, it's been more than 2 years now, and you're saying that you haven't shipped.
Yeah, and that's
all the units. Do you feel that?
I do, and that's.
Do you feel like that you should just go, well, look, I'm never going to get around to this. Here's your money back, kind of.
Well, interesting that you'd bring that up, because I did have a lot of that. What's honestly a sense of guilt to say, I took $12,000 from you people, and I've delivered not really anything worth $12,000. And for the people who, I think there are, what was the last count? About 40 rewards that are significant that I haven't delivered, that I can't until I actually finish the design and get it to work. And I don't want to give up, because I haven't, internally, I haven't given up at all. I've just been completely slammed mostly since honestly having taken the Blue Giga job, which it's a good job, but it's very demanding time wise. So
but there's a difference between giving up and giving money back, unless you need the money to continue the development.
Right. And
if you know what I'm talking about there's two different.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, you can still do it because it's your pet project and you want to finish it and it's fun and blah, blah, blah. But you've got people's money. That's the trap.
Right. And so I don't remember, to be honest, what the official Kickstarter terms of service were when I ran the project, which was, I think I launched it in March of 2011. And I know, well, I'm pretty sure at least they've gone through a couple of revisions since then at least. But that being said, screw the terms of service. I care about making sure that I deliver what I promised.
Right.
Even if
people want the same things you want, right? They want the same product and final thing,
Right. And so what I ended up doing actually I think it was at the beginning of this year, I was feeling a lot of pressure, and not from people who were complaining, but just internally. It's been a year and a half and I haven't delivered. This is really, really bugging me. And so I actually sent an internal message to all of the backers whom I had not sent the rewards to and said, look, I don't want to give up on this. I'm not giving up on this. I still have the money you gave me, or, a good portion of it. I've been basically on pause because of this gigantic workload that I've dealt with, but I'm not giving up. However, I realize it's already been a year and a half. You haven't seen anything. That can be frustrating. So anybody who is done with this project, for whatever reason, you don't have to give me a reason. I will give you all of your money back plus a little bit.
Excellent.
And 110% guarantee, huh? Or whatever it is.
Well, technically it was 105.
105. There you go. Yeah, it's just.
But yeah, because PayPal takes their cut, and I wanted people to feel like they weren't getting gypped if they wanted their money back. It's better return than the stock market in 2008.
Yeah, of course.
So, so I sent that message out, and I had, I think, 4 people tell me, "Are you kidding? No way. Keep working on it." And then I had I had 2. Let's see, was it 2 or 3? It was not more than 3. It might have only been 2 people who said, and it was quite some time between when I sent the message and when they contacted me. So it wasn't like they were waiting on this or something, but they eventually said, I understand. I really like this project, but I need the money back for, it was for some other personal reason. And it's possible they were just trying to make me not feel so bad, but I don't have a reason to believe that. So I had very, very few people say, okay, we'll take you up on that. And that was very encouraging to me, because people they gave me, all this money, and despite the fact that they haven't seen anything from it other than the periodic updates that I write, which, in the first half of this year and last half of last year were very, very sparse. Sadly, they still said, we want to keep supporting you because we think this is cool, and we know you think it's cool. So yeah, keep at it. And so I still have, I know I made it indefinite offer. So anytime people want to get out of it, it wasn't now's your chance,
Right.
and then you're
One-off,
out of
yeah.
luck. So I have enough money at this point. To be honest, I could refund everybody and still keep working on the key glove, because just the way the life has turned out, I could do that now. But the fact that I offered that to people and they said, no, keep it. We want to see this get finished. It was very encouraging.
Yep.
So
Definitely.
I'm still working on it. In particularly the last 6 weeks or so, I've been able to do a lot more than I have over the previous 9 months practically. So that's been motivating as well. And now that I have glass, I have something very tangible to work towards integrating it with. And that was my goal always. My personal, this is my favorite thing to do with the key glove, is to integrate it with something wearable.
Yeah.
Yep.
And the glass device is
Bam.
yeah, that's it. That's what I wanted.
Cool. Well, that's good, man.
And how did you get Google Glass? Did you get it through the same thing as Chris?
I think so, probably. If I had
If
glass.
I had glass, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
So that's what I did, and actually, what I used for my entry was I won't quote this verbatim because I can't remember, but it was basically, if I had glass, I would integrate it with the key glove, and so that's what got me my device. Well, that and a chunk of change, but.
Right, of course.
Yeah.
Yes, that's what
$1,500.
That's what got me access to it. So, yeah, it was the if I had glass thing.
Right.
Very cool.
I'm not sure that I could. I can understand how. Yeah, it's very cool that these people, really, didn't still want to support you and didn't want their money back, and all that sort of stuff. It probably takes a certain kind of person to accept that. Me, I'd go, oh no, look, I can't live with that. I'm here. I'm forcing you. I'm giving you your money back. Look, I just don't need it anymore. I guess it's. It'd be tough. It'd be a tough decision.
It would.
But yeah, I could imagine that would be very encouraging to get, to know that, those people know that you're not trying to scam them and, all that sort of stuff, and they support your project too. And it almost effectively becomes a donation then, almost. Really?
Almost. And I mean, if it came right down to it, if I said, I can't do this, or I'm not going to do this for whatever reason, I would definitely do whatever I could to get people their money back. There is no really easy way to just refund.
Really?
As far as I know. I mean,
because it's expired now. You'd have to individually. Yeah, PayPal only allow you to do a refund after a certain amount of time.
Yeah, well,
Because
actually,
it's 2 years. You'd have to individually.
Yeah, Kickstarter uses Amazon payments, but yeah, their system is
Amazon.
basically
Right,
the same.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
Right.
there wasn't an easy way to just do that through their system. So it would take some effort, but I mean, if it came to that, I would go to whatever effort was necessary to say, look, I can't do this. I can't deliver what I promised. So here, you need to take your money back because I'm not going to keep it.
Right. Yeah.
But I mean, after I sent that message out, I mean, regardless of how many people would have come back to me after that point, but when I finally sent that out, I felt so much better because it was like, okay, well now it's, whatever happens, I know I'm not keeping these.
Scamming
I'm not
anyone
scamming people, and I never felt like I was scamming people, but then
No,
it
of
was
course not.
they no longer feel like I'm scamming them.
That's right.
Yeah.
Or there's that worry on my part. I never had any complaints. Again, like I said, nobody said, "Hey, where's my key glove? I'm sick of this waiting."
Yeah.
Which itself is pretty encouraging.
Yeah, that's good. Well, cool. That's good to hear that it's going well. And like I said, I mean, we'll get some contact info at the end, maybe if people want to throw their hat in the ring to see if they can help out. But that'll be up to you.
I mean, the hardest thing, honestly, the main hurdle that I haven't been able to overcome yet is the integration, a very tight integration of fabric or thin leather. Even that complicates things, and a whole lot of wires.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, you come down to that physical, mechanical, in this case, fabric construction. I mean, it's nothing to do with the electronics. It's nothing to do with firmware, right? It's all physical. It's all physical build.
My mind
Yeah.
keeps going back to Hoken's tweets. So Zach, who's been on the show before, I keep seeing him tweet about he's making a keyboard that's going into a pair of pants. I don't know
Yeah,
what the hell's going on with that.
Yeah.
Well, you should talk to him because he's probably got some crazy people he's talking to.
I should. I've had a couple people have some really interesting technology. I'm sure you guys know Lynn Bruning.
Yes, yeah.
She does obviously a lot of stuff with e-textiles.
Conductive fabric and stuff, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and there are always just these little nuances of the design of the key glove that make it not quite fit with anything that I've tried so far. And it's like, oh man, this looks
Murphy every time.
so promising. So I have to find, well, I either have to find something that I haven't come across yet, or actually change the design a little, which I'm open to doing, but to only to a point, because you end up sacrificing some functionality that I would consider to be critical in order to make it simple enough that it works. So I don't want to go that route yet. I want to keep looking for the new thing that's actually going to do what I need it to do. But it is a challenge.
Yeah. So you told us about before the show started as well. So outside of Key Glove, I mean, it's not like you're making it any easy on yourself. You seem like you've got tons of cool stuff going on. In addition to Blue Giga, in addition to Key Glove, you're also doing something called I2C Dev Library, or devlib.com. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. That came about as another offshoot project of Key Glove development. And it started out with the code that I needed in order to work with the MPU 6050 motion sensor from InvenSense, which is a great little chip. It's very, very powerful. Combined 6-axis accelerometer and gyroscope. It's digital. And it was intended to replace two chips that I had on little breakout boards from SparkFun, the ADXL345, which is a 3-axis accelerometer, and the ITG 3200, which is incidentally also from InvenSense. It's a 3-axis gyroscope. So this one chip put it all together in one device, which I thought was pretty cool just by itself. But it also had this digital motion processor component inside that was... the marketing material said that it would take the raw data from accelerometer and gyroscope measurements and combine it into orientation data fused for you right on the chip, which when your platform is a low power, AVR micro, that's a big deal because it saves you a lot of time, processing time and power. If you got a battery powered thing, you want to have the AVR sleeping as much as you can. So long story short, I ended up getting one of the engineering samples of the MPU 6050 through one of the distributors out in California. I think it was CDI Web Component Distributors, and I got access to the register map for that device, which at the time they hadn't published. I'm like, this is an I2C device. How can you not publish a register map?
Yeah.
Just plug it in and guess.
Yeah, just throw some commands at it. Right?
Yeah.
It's just up and down on the data line, right? I mean, clock and data, whatever.
So there was no code to make use of this yet because it was a brand new device. And I know like SparkFun is good about pointing you towards code libraries for the sensors and things that they sell, even if they didn't write the code. They say here's an example script that implements the necessary capability to make use of this gyroscope or compass or whatever it is. But there was nothing. Well, at the time, SparkFun wasn't selling the MPU 6050 either. But there was just no place online where you could find code to do this. So with the register map that they gave me, I was able to build. The register map came from InvenSense, so that was cool on their part. I was just some random little guy, and they did manage to get me the register map.
Was no one else asking for it? That's what I don't get. I mean,
well, yeah, I don't know, to be totally honest. There were a couple other guys who, in the process of building the I2C DevLib site, I did a lot of collaboration with, and they, one in particular, actually did most of the legwork for what ended up giving us the finished product that I've got posted there for using the MPU 6050. Noah Zirkin, who you may know.
Oh yeah, he's the one who took pictures of Sergey Brin on the subway.
Yeah, on the subway. Yeah.
Which I plan to talk to him about. Everybody says, like, come on, really? Like, you just happen to see him on the subway. Like, Noah seems like a cool guy, but it's like, yeah, I'm like, really?
For whatever it's worth, I think that was not scripted or planned. I don't know. I have met Noah a couple of times.
Yeah. All I know is that when I got on a subway, I got a couple looks. When I was wearing glass on the subway, there was very few people who didn't notice me, and so
cyborg man.
Yeah, exactly. All I got was the glance, and then I think that's Google Glass, and then I start feeling like I'm not wearing pants or something,
I wonder sometimes, for people who don't know what it is, they think it's some kind of ocular implant, and like,
that too. I've heard that.
But anyways,
Noah's helping with this.
He had the same evaluation kit with the engineering sample from InvenSense that I did, and he had a logic sniffer from Selig. Do you know how to say that company name, by the way?
I say Selig.
Yeah, Selig.
Selig's how I say it, but yeah, that's a great little product they have.
Well, no, Selig is a different company. There's Selig Logic, and there's
Selig. Sorry, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
it's Selig.
I'm saying Selig. Sorry. The Selig is the logic analyzer?
Yeah, I just say Selig.
Okay, yeah, Selig. That's what I say. And it's just a little USB 8-channel, or they have a 16-channel version too. It is the coolest digital logic analyzer. I mean, it doesn't do a lot of different things.
It's very simple. No, it doesn't.
It's very
do
simple,
much, but it's simple.
But what it does, I mean, that thing has gotten me out of so many scrapes, and I love that. So, yay, Selig. I recommend it to anyone who's looking for a small logic analyzer. But that being said, he had one at the time, and I didn't yet. Now I do. And so he actually just sniffed the traffic from the evaluation board to see. Oh, okay, I've got ahead of myself. They didn't provide in the register map from InvenSense any information on how to use the DMP, the motion processor, which is like the biggest selling point, right?
Yeah,
and you can kind of I don't know.
What do they want you to use then? Just to like read a single output or something, or they didn't want you to interact with the processor, or what?
You have easy access to the raw accelerometer and gyroscope sensors. So that, I mean, it's still a good chip even all by itself because it's a combined 6-axis digital gyro and accelerometer. Yeah. That's cool. But the main selling point for that chip is the fact that it can do the internal calculations to give you orientation data. And that's the part that was not explained in the register map at all. Like there was zip. You could tell like they took it out. Or, I don't even, like, that's maybe going a little far. But there wasn't anything in there other than, the mentions of the DMP and the chip summary at the top. And so that was a little disappointing, to say the least. But the evaluation kit that they sold came with, I think, what was it? I think it was an MSP 430 or, something. Oh, no, actually it was an AVR on the companion board. So you plug in the little sensor evaluation kit to the AVR companion board, and it was preloaded with this. Yeah. I bet. It was preloaded with the firmware on the AVR that would set up the DMP correctly so that it would start spitting out orientation data. So like, hey,
put something in the middle there, right?
Right. So Noah plugs in his logic analyzer and just sniffs the traffic. He sent that over to me because I had been working on an analyzer. And that's something that you can actually see online. If you go to the MPU 6050 page under the devices section in the menu, there's a tab. I can't remember what it's called. It's like captures or something like that. And there's actually a whole bunch of them in there, which not all of them came from me. But what I did was, in the process of building this website, I put together a MySQL database backend for storing the register data.
Nice.
And so now one of the things that I think is really cool about the site is there's a totally dynamic register map that you can actually look through, scroll around, hover over and see all this detail.
I can see that, yeah.
This is nice just for displaying.
That's nice.
This is because most register maps I ever see are like someone, making a spreadsheet in Excel, and then, it's just, this is just a nice display mechanism. I like this a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, I still have some large visions for this site that I haven't quite had time to implement. But it is there's a lot of infrastructure there to do more of that. Like the ADXL345, because I still use that occasionally. That's another one that has a similarly entered dynamic register map. But having that database-driven register map and the capture file, I was able to combine those pieces of information and with some further study of the I2C protocol, figure out, okay, this is a read transaction, this is a write transaction, it's going to this device, this register, it's got this data, and then combining that with all the register name and bit field structure and all that, all of a sudden, here's this really clear picture of everything that's happening on this chip rather than just a stream of binary data.
Yeah.
So once we had that in place, it was just a matter of building an Arduino script that imitated the exact same set of transactions. And that's what Noah did. So he came up with something that just duplicated that same process, and bam, he had working orientation data coming out of his chip. So he gets
great,
credit
man.
for being the first one to do that with an Arduino. And then I took the code. Go ahead.
I have to say, if you're not a hardware person, if you've not exited the realm of software person by now, then this seals it in. You're at least a firmware person, probably a hardware person for life. You're screwed, man. So this is really, I really like this a lot. This is really impressive.
So I like really pretty, well indented, commented code.
Yeah.
I took the code that Noah wrote and I wrapped it into the library structure that I had started already. I don't know if you've looked around. There's at the GitHub repo that's attached to that same site, but there's a main Arduino class called I2C Dev, which is basically a wrapper for the wire library to give you transactional kinds of commands instead of like start transmission and then write a byte and end transmission, that kind of stuff. It's you can give it a bit or a byte or a string of bytes, and it'll do the whole thing for you all in one. And so it's not necessary, but it simplifies everything. Yeah. So that's the I2C Dev base class, and then there's device classes built on top of that make use of those functions. So I took the code that he wrote and wrapped it into that structure that I had, and created something where you can now see there's a MPU 6050 _ DMP6 example sketch. And most of the legwork is done for you in the library files. And all you have to do is run it, and you've got orientation data in one of many different formats that you might want to use.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
That's very cool. Oh. That basically, I mean, like, in terms of, like, you saying you liked Arduino because it allowed you to become a software person and work with hardware, you've basically allowed the same kind of thing for working with very specific chipsets. You're basically you're basically creating APIs for chipsets now, like large scale, just abstracting out everything except for the data that it's spitting out, which is very, very useful to people want to get up and running quickly.
Right.
Because that's the crap that you don't want to have to deal with. As a designer, you just don't give a toss.
Right.
Like, I just want my damn data from this chip I just bought from DigiKey. Damn it.
Yep.
And, you don't want to have to dig around.
Which is crazy, too, because you think about it. I mean, like, everything's going in this direction, right? I mean, like, Blue Giga, like you were talking about earlier, it's the same thing for abstracting out Bluetooth data, which is really just RF fiddling bits up and down, and but at the same time you're just sending serial data, right? You're just abstracting everything out, and I guess what it comes down to is how much you want to trade your time and money for the very specific development, or if you want to do something very specific, or if you want to just pay someone else to do some portion of it and then just talk to that portion with a highly abstracted interface. Which is,
I mean,
cool.
I've done the same thing before, many, many years ago, before all the Arduino business and everything else. I'd be using an I2C chip and some other chip, and like there were no libraries out there for it at all. There were no APIs, no nothing. So I had to write them myself from scratch and everything. And then I thought, well, geez, other people are going to be wanting this. I certainly wanted it. So, I'd zip it up and whack it on my website, and hopefully some people made some use from that. I mean, I didn't develop a really cool, website like this with interactive register mapping and everything.
You didn't use
a
GitHub
zip file,
either.
No, exactly. Here's my commented code in a zip file, but it talks to this chip and bam.
We'll update it next month.
And I tried to keep it as high level as possible, so it didn't matter whether you used an AVR or a PIC or a, MSP 430 or whatever.
Yeah.
It was, tried to keep it as high level abstracted as possible, and that's what you need when you're developing stuff.
Yeah, and one of the offshoots of this offshoot project is somebody has worked on porting some of the code over to, I believe, the MSP 430, and that's something that I wanted to do, but I haven't ever been able to spend enough time learning MSP 430 to do that myself.
Yep.
But along comes somebody else because the code is public, and they're like, hey, I really want this, and I happen to have time. So I'm going to do this and then do a pull request, and bam, now I've got MSP 430 code, which is exactly what I wanted to happen.
Yep.
Yeah. And it'll get pulled to STM32 and everything else, right? I mean, like all the variants. Yeah. That is very nice. The social coding method is very powerful, and as much as I love hardware, I can't discredit anything. It's just amazing how like how projects spread virally now like that. It's
well, you can do that with software. It's harder with hardware. I mean, a lot of people have tried it with hardware. With the whole open source hardware thing. That's the ultimate goal, is for people to build upon existing works. But it's by its very nature, it just doesn't work the same.
Right.
So, which is a bit unfortunate, but that's the real world. We've got a bunch of questions, don't we, on Reddit?
Yeah. I think
I'm
probably
not sure
some of them
we've
have covered.
probably answered them. I think we may have answered them. Have you seen these, Jeff?
I saw some of them. The last time I looked was a number of hours ago.
Okay, I think most of them are the same. The one I'm actually interested in this too. The question about Google and Bluetooth Low Energy, because I use Android devices. I think Dave does too. Do you know any reason why they're not kind of into that yet? Why it's not in any of the Android devices?
Honestly, all I have is speculation. I know most of the newer Android devices actually have hardware that supports it.
Yeah.
And it's just a matter of the APIs, coming up with a standardized API. And thankfully, at least as far as I understand, they are going to add their official support for BLE into API 18 whenever that comes out, which I think is the next one. I don't know when they're going to release it, but I and everyone else at Blue Giga is very much looking forward to that happening. I think that what it probably came down to was they didn't realize the rate of adoption that would happen because of what Apple did. When they added BLE to the iPhone 4S, all of a sudden there's this explosion. And I mean, it wasn't really an explosion, but if you look at the right graphs and the right period of time, there's
massage.
If you look at Kickstarter hardware devices, right? I mean, like
right. I mean, there are so many things now that are built for they're just little wearable sensors, a lot of health related things, all kinds of. Excuse me. I don't know if you heard that.
I just found a treasure box from Legend of Zelda. I know that sound.
Yeah, that's my text message sound.
Nice.
But anyway, there are so many products out there that are built around BLE now. Yeah. My only guess, because obviously Google is a big player, they sell a lot of mobile devices, they have good reason to incorporate BLE. Either they didn't realize it was going to be this big, or they didn't realize it was going to be as hard to implement internally as it ended up being. And this is, again, speculation. I have no reason to think it was hard for them particularly, but maybe. Or possibly they were exploring other avenues, specifically Ant Plus, if you're familiar with that one at all. It's kind of...
Ant.
Yeah, it's similar in a lot of ways to BLE, but different in some important ways, and ultimately they decided that's not going to work, we should do BLE, and then they were kind of behind. And all of these things honestly are just guesses. They obviously did ultimately decide that it was worth doing because they're going to include it in their next API. again, assuming I've been informed correctly. I'm pretty sure they announced that at Google I/O 2013, but I didn't actually see that happen. So that's my guess. I think it was some kind of a, well, darn, now we have to catch up. But now, I think that they'll probably end up doing really well because they've got such great coverage with Android. A lot of people are very embedded in that ecosystem as well.
I'm continuously amazed. So I was working on, I guess it was mid 2000s, I guess. I was working on this really crappy audio-based Bluetooth device. And I remember thinking, who the heck is going to use this kind of stuff? And it just, every year, it continually, impresses me about how many more and more people kind of get into it. And especially now with Bluetooth Low Energy stuff. I mean, you think about we were talking about abstraction before, it's just a really good abstracted interface, the fact that you can sell a device now that once Android comes out with their API, you can have something that talks to an iPhone and an Android effectively the same way. That's pretty powerful, right? I mean, that's...
Yeah.
I mean, that's the basis of your business, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I'll become a lot more marketable once the rest of
Android... Oh boy, you'll get poached by somebody else.
Right. Well, actually, we had another question about that. Talking about the other players in the market. You mentioned CSR is the one of the chips that Blue Giga uses, and we mentioned TI as well. But Dit-R on Reddit asked about why did CSR become the industry standard, and why aren't other ones coming up faster? Basically,
That's a good question, and again, I'll mostly have to speculate. Anything that I wouldn't be able to speculate, I probably wouldn't be able to say anyway.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure. My feeling, just based on what I've picked up, and I'm not really far into the component selection process internally. I mean, that's typically handled by other people. But my feeling is that in order to become really big in that kind of a market sector, it takes a lot of time, or else you have to have something that's so far beyond and obviously better than what other people have that all of a sudden you just, you get everybody. But that hasn't happened. I don't think that it probably will happen, barring something that none of us could imagine.
Right.
So it takes time in order to develop, especially the reputation for capability, for reliability, for being able to deliver functional, stable products, for constantly releasing new updated versions that do more things that people want, for staying on top of all the latest certifications. And, there's a lot that goes into wireless design, not just at Blue Giga's level. We focus on the module level, but even farther down where CSR is, where they're doing the chipset design and the actual platform. I don't know if, like I was mentioning earlier, the XAP architecture, that for all I know, that could actually be theirs. It might be proprietary. And that if it is, that would be something that's very, that takes a lot of work to develop, to troubleshoot, to maintain, to support.
Yeah, right.
So you have these small players who maybe are doing their own design, and maybe they're better in every conceivable way than what CSR makes. But because they're not really known, they don't have the clout that CSR has. Clout with a C. They don't have the big backing that they would need in order to say, hey, look, I know you guys maybe don't know us as a customer, but we can actually make something that's, we can provide 10 million modules for your huge volume product. People, giant customers aren't going to say, yeah, we'll take a shot on that. You'll get the smaller companies to say, oh, hey, this looks better. We'll try this.
Yeah, give us a discount. We'll give it a shot.
Yeah. So it'll take time for anyone, even who has a better design, to develop that to the point where they're recognized among the big players, who actually are involved in defining these standards and things like that, to become a big enough player to make a difference to, eventually potentially unseat somebody like CSR or, whoever else is making chipsets, Panasonic or layered, or there's some
I think
big
the
companies.
question was in the other direction though, because it seems like the bigger players, like the big RF players, like Triquint and stuff like that, or maybe that's I'm talking on my butt again, but I was thinking like TI, and the question was actually like on the higher end, like TI is now moving into it, like the bigger players, not so much the smaller players coming up, because I didn't know who CSR even was personally. Dave, did you know who they were?
No, not really. It's sort of no. If you press me, I wouldn't be able to tell.
Yeah.
So you're saying companies like TI who haven't traditionally done Bluetooth?
Yeah, like why? Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, I mean, it feels like this is almost like an innovator's dilemma kind of thing. You know what I mean? Like, it just wasn't a big market for certain people, and maybe others it was, and now others are playing catch up.
That's okay. I did interpret the question differently. I would say if you start to get a lot of market development, like what we're seeing with BLE, now all of a sudden, just from an economic standpoint, it becomes lucrative to be somebody who's doing well there. So you might not have previously considered entering the wireless market because there are other people who do that, and we're more focused on processors, or whatever the thought process might be. But now all of a sudden, hey, there's this rapidly growing demand. The number of Bluetooth devices in use by customers is supposed to double in 3 years, or that's a totally bogus statistic, but obviously it's growing fast. So you end up with this motivation for other players to enter the market, and somebody like TI who maybe hadn't been doing it before can say, well, we have a lot of experience with some kinds of low-level chip design. Maybe we could get our foot in the door for doing Bluetooth designs. Maybe just BLE at first. Maybe we'll start doing some dual mode chips for both. If we get some traction. Not again personally. I don't have any real idea what goes on behind the board meetings of these companies, but that would be my guess. They're looking at the market and saying, this has potential, and we are good enough at some aspects of this that we might have a chance to start expand our product line in a way that really could be beneficial as we ride this wave up of developing wireless products. And the bigger the opportunity is, the more players are going to jump in, and you end up with this big, huge mishmash of as an end customer, who do I pick for my design? But I think the end result is that because it's very voluntary, the Bluetooth SIG is, you only have to do their certification thing if you are using Bluetooth officially. It isn't just that band; it's all the unregulated 2.4 gigahertz, or mostly unregulated. But there's actually a lot of leeway. You can't put Bluetooth anything on your device if you don't follow their guidelines. But it is a voluntary association. So because of that, there's not some of the more detrimental kinds of regulations that you sometimes end up with when some government gets involved. And it's very collaborative, and so you end up with, well, there might be a lot of players right now that ultimately ends up being good for the end customer, because eventually it'll settle, and when it does settle, it's going to settle towards what's better rather than the lowest common denominator, because everyone is vying for the customer's share. I mean that's how any market works. The guy who has the best product ends up doing the best because they have the best product.
Right. So you're just saying that there's people that are in the process, or we're behind on the process of entering the market, and the lag is now catching up. That's kind of the idea.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. What is how about another question here? The Andeet on Reddit asked, what are the challenges in making a dual stack between Bluetooth 2 and 4? And do you have much visibility into the stack side of things?
Not a whole lot. On the implementation side of things, I do. Actually, Blue Giga does not currently have a dual mode module.
Okay.
So it's something that we've been contemplating, but we don't have one yet. So I won't be able to answer this question as well as I might otherwise. But just from what I know, I would say the biggest challenge, well, I mean, it depends on whether he's talking about actually designing your own dual mode chipset yourself, or just implementing one, or
I think
what the challenges are.
Yeah, it'd be implemented. Yeah,
because BLE and classic Bluetooth use exactly the same spectrum and even the same set of channels. BLE has a subset of them, but it's the same range. There's some bandwidth, practical issues with, obviously you can't fully utilize BLE and classic Bluetooth at the same time. It just won't work because you're using the same spectrum. So that would be a challenge, like especially if you involve either really high bandwidth serial data or high quality audio. Those two things tend to take most of the available spectrum for any active Bluetooth link. So you can't typically do a lot of other things at the same time. So if you wanted to do, stereo audio streaming from your smartphone plus a bunch of other stuff, you might run into an issue. Other than that, the design approach between classic Bluetooth and Bluetooth Low Energy is, the profiles for classic Bluetooth are all defined by the SIG. So you've got serial port profile and HID and the other ones. They're all handed to you, and they say this is how they work and this is how you use them. With BLE, they totally changed that around, and in order to implement anything, you actually have to build the profile yourself, unless it's provided for you as part of the stack you're using. And so it makes it more work to do, but it gives you a ton of flexibility, which is a really nice feature to have.
Right, because you can make it really lightweight, right? If you're just doing a very simple sensor and just sending back a temperature or something, right? You could just send that back.
Exactly. You don't have to say, okay, now I'm going to open my transparent serial data pipe and do all that negotiation. You just say, I'm going to send one packet, one byte or 2 byte packet once a second, and then the module can sleep the rest of the time, and it'll last on a coin cell for a year. Whereas you'd never ever be able to do that with Bluetooth Classic. So the two design approaches are very different, and if you have both operating at the same time, or even optionally, one or the other, you're going to have to design around the one that eats power from the rest of or the perspective of the rest of your system. Because even if you're only using BLE, you could run it on a coin cell for a month or a few months, or whatever your micro is doing, maybe a year. If you also want to support classic Bluetooth, well, now you're really not going to be able to take advantage of that incredible power savings, because you're going to have to run the classic radio all the time, and that's going to pull 2 milliamps all the time, and it'll kill a coin cell in 2 days.
Yeah, it's analog versus digital cell phone, right?
Right, exactly. So that's why most of the time, when you see dual mode radios, mostly they're in the end of the connection that has the big battery, like the smartphone or the PC, and the peripheral device has one or the other. Right. And so there's a certain amount of security that it feels like you can get if you say, well, I want to support everything, so I'm going to build a dual mode module into my product. And you may end up actually cutting some corners or losing a lot of potential if you were to say, I wish I could support classic Bluetooth, but my product, most of my data transfer really isn't built around that, and I can make it way cooler if I do BLE only.
Exactly.
So it's a tough design choice. It'll become easier when BLE becomes more widespread, especially when Android starts supporting it, and most of Android phones have that API in them, which will take a little while. But that's probably the main challenge when you design any kind of a Bluetooth product, especially when you make the choice between BLE versus classic Bluetooth. You have to look at the data that you need to transmit, not just transmit, but send back and forth. And if it makes sense to do it in BLE because of the way the protocol's built, and you have a very small amount of data that you send in frequently, or something like that, if it fits in BLE, and putting it into Bluetooth Classic is more of a kludge because you want to support that, you might be better off just cutting that off and saying, I'm going to go BLE only. Whereas if you have something where you're really pushing the limits of BLE, like BLE is bad for high bandwidth. Like you can't do audio over it, at least not right now.
Of course. Yep.
there's some really significant limitations in terms of speed because they built the whole protocol for very small packets very infrequently. So we've had a number of customers who really like a cable replacement example that we have, which actually works okay. It kind of bends the protocol into doing something that it really wasn't designed to do. And even though it works, if you were to compare a classic Bluetooth SPP connection to what you actually have to end up with on the BLE side of things in order to make it do what feels like the same thing, you're actually doing worse with BLE because you're using it in a way that it wasn't designed.
Exactly.
So yeah, it's for dual mode designs. It really, I imagine that there won't be a lot of those things other than how they are. Anything that's power conscious that needs to last for a while. Those typically won't end up being dual mode designs for that reason. It'll be one or the other.
Hardware.
You are
design choices.
You are a fickle
trade-offs.
mistress. Yes.
Well, Jeff, I'm afraid that your amp hour is up.
I amp 2 hours.
We've been yapping on
it.
for like an hour and 45 minutes.
Oh, it's been good though. This is good
Yeah,
stuff.
It has been
I've enjoyed
good.
it.
You talk
Lots of
the
Bluetoothy
code
goodness.
of the. It's like the gateway, Bluetooth is the gateway that many people want to push things through, and having good modules and knowing how to use them are important things.
Bluetooth is the Arduino of the communications world, is it? The wireless
you could almost say
communications
that.
world.
You could kind of say the same thing
goodness.
for XB. Not to knock Bluetooth. I've used XB before, and
Right.
it can be really convenient. But
Yeah.
Yep.
Bluetooth is great because of the smartphone integration. It just opens up
Yeah,
so
of
many
course.
opportunities. And I
Oh, yeah.
feel no shame in plugging Blue Giga because I do think they're a great company. And if you need support and you're in the US, you'll probably end up with me anyway.
Suckers. Yeah.
All right, Jeff, thank you very much for joining us and giving us the lowdown on
Yeah.
all things Bluetooth. It's something we haven't had on the show
How should
before.
people get in touch with you?
Yes.
Especially if they want to help out with Keyglove.
Well, there's a contact form on the Keyglove website that's really easy to find. I think it's under the contact menu item. My email address for that project is jeff@keyglove.net. That's probably the simplest way. My personal website is sectorfedge.com. Or sorry, .net. I get these mixed up. I think I have both actually, but sectorfedge.net. And there's another contact form there as well. My code up on GitHub typically has my email address in the header comments, so it's pretty easy to find me.
And your Sector Fedge on Twitter as well.
And Sector Fedge on Twitter, yes. I'm on Facebook too, but I typically don't friend people I don't know.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Facebook.
Facebook is for
break.
ignoring the coworkers' baby pictures.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks again, man.
All right, Jeff.
It was very
Thanks, mate.
very cool.
you're welcome. Thanks for having me.
And that's Jeff Roberg, not Jeff Kaiser.
All right. Well, we'll talk to everyone next week.
All right.
All right, see ya.
See you guys.